It sounds like the days of DC Comics just resting on their laurels, basically counting on Batman for everything, are about to be over. We know that the Discovery merger with WarnerMedia, we've got Warner Brothers Discovery now, its own entity, with its own new leader, David Zaslav, is complete. It is its own company, and it has priorities. The number one priority is saving money, but DC appears to be the other priority, and this week is the first time we've heard anything regarding DC Comics. It wasn't exactly addressed specifically, but what they were talking about does include DC Comics, and it doesn't sound like Jim Lee and the rest of the people at DC Comics are going to be able to get by on Easy Street anymore. There's going to be some splaining to do about the state of DC Comics and the universe and the way it's synergizing with their movie division, their animation, gaming, all that stuff. I would not want to be Jim Lee sitting in front of David Zaslav trying to explain all this stuff. This comes from an article from Variety about Warner Brothers Discovery basically overhauling all of DC. It starts out like this, and this is important. The new owners of all things Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman are exploring an overhaul of DC Entertainment. Multiple sources close to the situation told Variety. That is very important. DC Entertainment is the company that not only does DC Comics, but is responsible for the characters, the IP, and how they're used throughout Warner Brothers. And the head honcho would be Jim Lee. Can you imagine them discussing this overhaul and being like, everything doesn't feel like it's being managed correct? Bring Jim in here. I want to talk to him about the characters. What are they doing in the comic books? Mr. Lee, what have you done with Superman? What's Superman doing? He's the highest selling American comic book character in the history of comic books. What are we doing with Superman? Well, Clark Kent's, he's not saving people on Earth. He's actually on another planet. But his son, John Kent, is taking over the mantle of Superman. And we're doing this wonderful coming out story. And he's had his first kiss. He just came out to his mom. Is he saving anybody? Is John Kent, doing Superman stuff? Is he saving people? Well, he's not really doing that. We're working our way towards it. We've only had this comic book out for almost a year now. We haven't quite got to the point where John Kent, the new Superman, is actually saving people. Well, that doesn't work. What do you do with Batman? Well, we're doing everything with Batman. In fact, we have multiple Batman. We've got Batman, Bruce Wayne. We got another Batman in New York. We got Batman Beyond, and we have another version in the White Knight universe. Actually, we have about 40 versions of Batman going on right now. And he's pretty much the backbone of the DC Comics publishing. What do you mean the backbone? 50% of all of our comics are starring Batman or a Batman-related character, in a major way. 50%, over half of your comic books are leveraged against one character, essentially. Yes, that's what we've done. What have you done with Wonder Woman? Obviously, we had almost like $1 billion movie there. We had the sequel. We got another movie coming out. Wonder Woman's really important. Well, we have an event going on. Is it selling well? No, it's not selling at all. Well, who'd you put on that book? Is it anyone I would recognize? No, you would not recognize any of the writers on that book. In fact, we decided to not put anyone talented on the Wonder Woman event because she's not Batman. Okay, what are you doing with Green Lantern? Everyone knows who Green Lantern is. We got a Green Lantern TV show coming up on HBO Max. It's going to be important to the future of the brand here. What are you doing with Green Lantern? Well, recently, we just wiped out the Green Lantern lore. Everything that's recognizable to the Green Lanterns, other than the lanterns themselves, has been erased. There's no Guardians of Oa. We don't have a central power battery. Nothing really works like it used to. Some Green Lanterns that were lanterns in the past are actually blue lanterns now, Star Sapphires. What the fuck is a Star Sapphire? Well, I don't have time to explain, the emotional sectors of the Green Lantern cores and on the multiple cores that are out there. But we just did a major overhaul on Green Lantern, and it doesn't work like it used to. Well, what about the Flash? Barry Allen's really important. We got this Flash movie coming out. We got the TV show going on. The ratings have declined a bit. What are you doing with Barry Allen? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. Barry Allen's lost right now. We're not really sure where he is, but Wally West is the real Flash in DC Comics right now. It's a really good series, not really selling very well because nothing sells outside of Batman. But Wally West is essentially holding the helm for Flash, not Barry Allen. No, not Barry Allen. He's lost. We don't know where he is. How about the Justice League? That's the premier team book in all of DC Comics. What are you doing with the Justice League? Actually, we're killing off the Justice League next month, and we're not going to have a Justice League comic for a very long time. We got a big event coming up, Dark Crisis. You killed off the Justice League. You killed off your premier book that had the Trinity in it, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman, which are going to be really important to the future of what we're doing here at Warner Brothers Discovery. Yes, we decided to kill off the Justice League. We needed some headlines, and we figured this was a way to get some attention on DC Comics. Couldn't you have written good stories? Could you imagine having this meeting? It'll be so much fun. I would love to be a fly on the wall of Jim Lee trying to explain the current state of the DC Comics universe to David Zaslav and the other executives, the people who are going to be overseeing this operation. It would be hilarious. Now, we do have a lot more information in this article. I'll do the best I can to get through it somewhat quickly. There will be a link in the video description if you want to read the whole thing, because I had to snip out a few things. It's been less than a week since Discovery closed its $43 billion deal for WarnerMedia under the new moniker of Warner Brothers Discovery. David Zaslav, the CEO of the combined companies, and top leadership have been toying with the idea of turning DC into its own solidified content vertical, the source said. The move would potentially affect DC feature film development in the Warner Brothers Picture Group, streaming series at Warner Brothers Television, and the creative arm within DC proper, all in an effort to have disparate elements more closely aligned in order to maximize the value of the superhero stable, one often seen as punching up against Marvel. Well, I wonder why that is. There's no coherent direction or mission for the DCEU itself. You go over there and you look at the comic books, everything's an absolute clusterfuck. You go over there and you look at the animation, that doesn't support anything. I wonder why they would need to streamline all this stuff and fix it. This is one of Jim Lee's jobs. In fact, it's probably his most important job, managing the IP in the way the characters are portrayed throughout all mediums of entertainment, comic books, video games, gaming, animation, television, streaming, movies, all that stuff. He's supposed to be on top of this. And there's no cohesion whatsoever. And nowhere is that more clear than in DC Comics themselves, which you would think would be the specialty of Jim Lee, since he's been making comic books since he was in his early 20s. And that's really why he's there. He's the DC comic book guy that's supposed to know the characters. But apparently, we only care about Batman these days. I wonder why they need to do all these things. Before the merger closed, Zaslav vetted candidates with experience in creating and nurturing blockbuster intellectual property with the goal of potentially finding someone to serve as a creative and strategic czar similar to what Marvel has in Kevin Feige. One insider suggested that Zaslav was less interested in finding a creative guru and more eager to hire someone who had the type of business background needed to keep all the different factions at DC working more harmoniously. I would say it sounds like the days of Jim Lee being responsible for any of that stuff are pretty much over. They're numbered. But it sounds like this new position, or this position, is very important to David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery. Jim Lee has quite frankly done a very poor job about that. And certainly it's been noticed by the people and the executives that are coming in to take over. And that's certainly going to be amplified when they talk about the management of the comic book universe itself, which you would think would be the baseline, the basic stuff, the foundation of all things DC Comics within DC proper, DC Entertainment, however you want to call it. There are big changes coming to DC Comics. I thought it would take a while. I thought it might take a year or two before they really even got down to DC Comics made changes, because there's not a lot of revenue there. But it sounds like David Zaslav is prioritizing the intellectual property and what DC Comics should mean to the future. Not just as comics, obviously, because that's not the big revenue generator, but on films, video games, animation, television, movies, all that stuff. These things are very, very important. The mismanagement has been noticed. Insiders say that Zaslav believes that the success of the merger, one that has left the company highly leveraged, will rest in no small part on unlocking the full potential of the DC Comics universe of characters. Discovery insiders believe that although DC has achieved cinematic success with recent films such as Aquaman and The Batman, it lacks a coherent creative and brand strategy. Discovery believes that several top-shelf characters such as Superman have been left to languish and need to be revitalized. What the hell are they doing with Clark Kent? What are they doing with the Superman mythos? What are they doing with Metropolis? This is the most recognizable superhero in the world, the best-selling DC Comics character ever, and it's going to take Batman a long time, even if they're publishing 30 Batman books a month, to even catch up. That's how far ahead Superman is as far as the lifelong sales of the character. One of the most important heroes to the DC Comics universe, and they haven't gotten him right in like 30 or 40 years. When was the last good Superman movie came out with Christopher Reeves? That's the last time they got him right on the big screen. The version we have right now in that Superman and Lois TV show on CW is pretty good. They've done an admirable job, at least initially, in portraying what Superman should be but we don't even have that character in comic books. We had that character under Peter J. Tomasi and Dan Jurgens. That was all thrown by the wayside, so Brian Michael Bendis could make too much money and basically take the sales. And now we've got Tom Taylor on the flagship Superman book where they replaced Clark Kent with a new version of Superman, and it's all about his coming out story. It's not even about Superman saving people anymore. Yes, I would say that Superman has been utilized well across mediums under the leadership and the directions from Warner Brothers and DC Comics. Quite frankly, Wonder Woman outside of that first film isn't done very well either, especially the comic books. We get Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad and Stephanie Williams and Stephanie Phillips and Vita Ayala and all these really terrible creators. I wonder why Wonder Woman's not in a good place in the comic book universe. They don't know how to use the character. There needs to be better management and oversight of the characters and the direction of the universe. How many different versions of Batman do we have right now? How many versions of Catwoman do we have now? How many different Superman versions do we have? They can't control this stuff right now because they haven't seen it as a priority. Thankfully, David Zaslav and the team that he's brought in see it as a priority. There's not going to be any more free rides for the people at DC Comics. If you think that first Bloodbath was bad, I think it's going to be much worse once they look at the state of the comic book universe and the way it's being managed. Finally, the article says the company believes that DC must do more to grow its approach to comic book fare, including bolstering gaming. Zaslav has pledged to find $3 billion in synergies in the newly merged company, a signal of how important cost-cutting will be to Warner's new owners. Mining of DC's library of characters could help control spending as Warner Brothers Discovery owns the underlying intellectual property, insiders say. Yes, this is very important. They own all these characters. They don't have to go out there and pay fees. They can do it all in-house, but you have to have the right people. And the cool thing that you get with DC Comics that you wouldn't get with Marvel Comics is you get the Vertigo stuff. There are a lot of different genres in there that play outside of comic book superhero fare. There are a lot of things that would translate very well to streaming. We see the Sandman universe. We see other things. We've seen Swamp Thing already on HBO Max. There's a lot of great material that can be mined there and a lot of potential. DC Comics is vital. It sounds like it's the second priority behind saving money to the new leadership at Warner Brothers Discovery. And I believe with everything that we're hearing that DC Comics is going to get a major overhaul along with everything else with DC Entertainment. They're going to bring in their Kevin Feige. Jim Lee's role is likely to be diminished. There's going to be more oversight, new oversight, and hopefully some more caring eyes on the DC Comics universe as well to make sure that this thing is actually functioning correctly because it's absolutely broken right now. I got my good friend Josh is going to be on the channel here in a couple of days. We're going to talk about it. I know a lot of people are afraid of change. I'm not afraid of change. I embrace change, especially when you have a universe like DC Comics universe that's absolutely fucked up right now. So I'm all for it, and it sounds like David Zaslav is going to be cleaning house when it comes to DC characters, DC films, DC Comics. And it's about time. I know I have a large segment of fans that say we need to bring back the Snyderverse. It's all about Zack Snyder. Well, I couldn't disagree more. That would be the very worst decision you could bring is to have Zack Snyder be the new czar over anything DC. His take on the characters was absolutely atrocious. If you don't believe me, I had this conversation with my good friend Fatal J. He loves Zack Snyder. He's a big fan of the Snyderverse. We had a nice 25-minute debate over how bad the Snyderverse is. I destroy him, and I prove once and for all he should never come back to DC anything.